Thank you for tuning in to Manifesting Sons broadcast. Today we would like to share with you an impactful message by Dr. Mark T. Jones Sr., Before I Let Go, Creating Healthy Relationships. We hope you enjoy our program.
So this morning, we are going to be talking about loving past dislikes. And one of the things that, my husband and I always say, we teach and everything. You can love a person but not like everything about them. So I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. And then my husband's going to open us up with our lesson today. Amen. And I am reading 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. It says, charity, which is also love, suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth itself not. It's not puffed up. It does not behave itself unseemly. It seeketh not her own. It's not easily provoked. It's not easily provoked. I'm still learning that part, but I still love you. It thinketh no evil. It rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth. And we'll get into that. It beareth all things, believeth all things, hopes all things, endureth all things. Love or charity never fails, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away.
One of the things that we want to point out is that nobody here married the person that you married without loving them. We marry because of love. But what we've discovered is that even though we marry out of love, most of us, we marry right, you marry for love. But many people divorce because of what they dislike. And so one of the things that we want to set forth is that you got to give yourself permission to keep loving a person when you start realizing about them certain things that you don't like. Somebody say, love is what I choose.
Love is what I choose.
Like is what I prefer.
Like is what I prefer.
Now, I want you to understand that your choice to love is normally on the polar opposite end of your preferences. I said your choice to love is on the polar opposite end of your preferences. And the reason for that is that opposites attract. And there are many times people look more fleshly terms of compatibility than realizing that more than likely you're going to attract into your life or be attracted to someone who is nothing like you. And it's not your job to change them to become like you once you realize they're not like you. So we put together to open us up a little icebreaker here about some things I like and some things my wife like, because some of y'all gonna realize it's actually normal that you're nothing like the person you with.
And before he get into that, because I think this is what brings a lot of confusion and turbulence to a lot of relationships, because when we're in that courtship, what do we look for?
What we like.
What we like, or similarities, what we have in common. And then it's like, okay, although, you may like football, but you guys don't like the same team, okay? And so those are some of the things where married couples especially, well, yeah, he liked football, she liked football, we can sit. What's your team? Hers is the Tar Heels and his... Luke. So one has a winning team and one has a sucky team, but they both like football, right? And so I think a lot of times in our courtship and when we're getting to know somebody, we like some of the same things, but then when it comes to breaking those things down, our likes are totally different. We like music, I like this type of music, he liked that type of music. So, and again, I think what happens is when we're drawn to that person out of what we find is a connector or similarities, and then when you start really evolving and connecting and really seeing the person for who they really are, you find out, wow, I love this person, but I really don't like everything about him and or her.
And for example, my wife will tell you her likes. She likes colors. A whole lot of colors.
I just didn't wear them today.
She ain't wear them today. But I like basics.
Very basic.
Now, my wife also, when my wife goes shopping, she goes on an adventure. She like touching everything in the store, right? When I go shopping, I go for what's on my list. Come on, somebody. So most of the time she asks me to go shopping, the answer is no. Because I'm not going for an adventure, I'm going for the items that are on my list. I'm not going for an experience, I'm going for what's on my list, and I want to get out. She like going through the line where you got to talk to people. I don't like that. I like to go to the checkout line. I want to talk to nobody. I can zoom, zoom, zoom and get out.
I hate self-checkout. I
love it. It's the best thing they ever created. It's the best thing they ever created. My wife likes spending, and I like savings and investment. My wife is my wife is literally the life of the crowd. She never meets a stranger. Within 5 minutes, she got everything except a social security number from people, literally. So my wife likes being in crowds. She likes being around people. She likes talking. I literally have seen my wife texting, "Who are you talking to?" And she rattled off 4 people. I'm like, "Which one?" She's like, "All of them."
But not at the same time.
But I don't, yeah, you do. At the same time. She talked to all 4 of them at the same time. But I like talking to one person at one time. And also, when it comes to this whole being in the crowd thing, this is my calling to be in the crowd. It's not my preference. My wife don't mind being out and being again, she's a social butterfly. I'm a homebody. I like being home. My wife like randomly talking to people.
No, wait. It's not really random. I realize that he may think it's random but there's a lot of times when I'm just randomly talking, people always tell me, "Oh my gosh, thank you for saying XYZ elemental people." I'm like, "Oh, okay." But it may be random, but it had a purpose to that randomness.
It's by design. I talk to people I know. For example, if we just went to a group the other night, we went to a gathering the other night, right? So my wife's walking around talking to people and going down memory lane. I'm sitting at the table talking to the one person at my table, and she's sitting right there, Cheryl Kegler, right? I'm like, I ain't talking to nobody unless I know them. True story, right? Somebody shout, opposites attract. My wife, as you notice, is very creative. She's a very creative person. I don't have a creative bone in my body. Any other creatives in the house will tell you that. I'm like, this is the way we're going. Now go make it, whatever it is, right? So my wife is very creative, but I'm administrative. My wife, watch this, my wife loves great steak. She loves it going to steakhouse, right? I absolutely hate steak. I like fish. My wife like lumpy oatmeal.
I like my oatmeal lumpy. Straight gangster.
I like creamy oatmeal. My wife likes salt in her grits.
That's how you're supposed to eat grits.
I like sugar in my grits.
No.
Who likes sugar in your grits? Who knows it's only right? Who on the Lord's side?
Team salt. Team salt. I notice most people from up north actually like sugar in their grits. So don't come down to the south with the sugar and the grits. We don't want sweet grits.
Now watch
Keep
this.
It salty.
Who I choose to love and what I like do not have to be perfectly balanced concepts. Say this with me. Oneness does not mean sameness.
Does not.
Come on, say it again. Oneness does not mean sameness. It means wholeness through integration. Wholeness through integration. And so that's one of the things that we want to convey in today's lesson is the fact that we typically are attracted to a person, we love a person, we connect to them, and then all of a sudden, we begin focusing upon the things we don't like, and the things you don't like begin having more of a voice in the relationship than the reasons for which you were attracted to that person in the first place.
Oftentimes when I'm talking to couples or an individual who's telling me all the 101 things that they really hate about their spouse, I always go for the juggler. So what's that one thing you love? Mm-hmm. And sometimes when they're like mad as spit, they'll look at me like, nothing. I'm like, it's something. And we don't marry anybody we don't love. Mm-hmm. and we're not going to marry anybody that we don't feel love us. So what happens is there becomes a breakdown because, like my husband said, even though we're two complete opposite individuals, there's a form of oneness that we have with the building of our union, the building of our intimacy and everything. But me trying to make him me and him trying to make me him will frustrate the process. And a lot of times what happens is the things that we don't like in our spouse is the things that we find, like we say, our pet peeves. And I think every marriage, if you find one that's like, that's my pet peeves. He put the toilet paper this way, I put the toilet paper over. And so sometimes and it won't go. And so I'm like mad. So when I come out of the bathroom, I have a different personality for like 10 seconds. And he was like, well, what's wrong with you? And in my mind, like, you know what's wrong with me. You put the toilet paper upside down instead of upside, and it's like, for like 10 seconds, I come out like, But for the most part, we deal with these things. And so if we're not careful, we'll start giving an account for everything that we don't like about each other, and we store that. And that's how offense set in relationships. That's how bitterness began to creep in relationships. That's how even fear and mind-blinding spirits begin to agitate and harass the relationship. Because now you have a stockpile of things that you don't like. And a lot of times the things that we don't like about each other, we either A, don't communicate about it and then we become passive-aggressive, or we communicate about it and nothing changes. And so we have to remember when the Bible talks about right here, it says it does. Which one?
Well, 1 Corinthians 13:5. One of the things that it says there is love keeps no records of wrong. So I want you to tell somebody, love keeps no records of wrong. I remember what you did way back. No, love keeps no records of wrong. And so that's one of the things that gets us distracted in our relationship is that we start tallying up the score. I changed and you didn't change. Or you did this like 3 years ago and I remember what I had on and I remember where we were. And the Bible said love keeps no records of wrong. I want you to think about this. It is impossible that those of you single people, it is impossible that you will find someone or be found by someone in whom you like everything about them. I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't care how carefully you choose or how carefully you have been chosen, you will never find anyone that you like every single thing about them. So what we're talking about today is something a little bit deeper than your preferences, and that is the choice to love. Now watch this now. Love is about offering myself to the benefit of my wife. Love is about my wife offering herself to the benefit of me. Think about your relationship with God. How many have a relationship with God? Who's the giver in a relationship? God is, right? Who's the responder to that giving? You are. So watch this now. God is love and love gives, and we simply respond to what God does. We respond to what God has done, even through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We respond to the goodness of God. We respond to the attribute of God in what? Worship. We respond to the attribute of God in worship. So everything we do with God is a response. But notice God is always a giver. Say God is love and love is give, which means love and give are synonymous. If you say that you love someone, but all you ever think about is what they don't do for you, tell somebody that's not love.
I just want to touch on something on 1 Corinthians 13:4. It says love or charity suffers long. And I think on this right here, when it says suffer long, a lot of people, often ask, okay, when is this going to change? And I've asked couples, okay, if this never changes, will this relationship thrive or survive? But then in the next verse, it says love is kind. So when you see love is kind, love is not abusive. Love does not mistreat. Love does not mishandle. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, love hurts. Love hurts. Love does not hurt.
Enabling does.
Enabling will hurt, but love does not hurt. I hear people, oh, love is a gamble. The Bible never said love was a gamble. a gamble. That's when we get into our flesh because we're not clear and concise on what love is. So if you're saying, oh, love is a gamble, then right now you're really saying, I really don't know what love is. I don't know that love is kind and it suffers long and it doesn't puffs itself up. You're just going by a standard of the world system when you say love is a gamble. And also when you say love hurts, love is not hurtful. There are some things that, when we deal with each other and because we speak the truth in love, what they may say hurt, and I'm not saying like abusive hurt. What I'm saying is like, okay, such and such and such, I never saw myself in that way. So now it hurts to know that now I have to go back to God and say, okay, wow, I thought I had it going on, or I thought I had it right, and none of us ever sees we can never discern our own dysfunction. So when you look at these things, a lot of like, well, I'm in love, or they say they love me, but if their love walk does not line up according to Scripture, it's not love. It could be infatuation, it could be lust, it could be all these other things, but it's not love, because love is a place where you should be safe.
Let me mention this also. The only thing you lose loving like God wants you to is what God can't use. If you love the way God wants you to, the only thing you lose, look, somebody tell them, my flesh is dying. So we're dying to the flesh. We're dying to those 17 works of the flesh. But when you really learn love, love is about likeness. Say, love is about likeness.
Love is about likeness.
The choice to love is the choice to align with this process of being like God. Why do I love my wife unconditionally and unreservedly? Because God is love and I'm becoming in his likeness. That means that there's nothing my wife needs to do in order to maintain my love. There's nothing she needs to do in order to maintain me coming toward her in a loving fashion, because God is love and you and I are being born into that very likeness and that very image. So that's why we should love.
Now, there's also, we've taught this, and it takes three, about the stalemate, cellmate, roommate mentality of a relationship. And the whole goal is for us to be at one, to have our soulmate. And a lot of times, we go through these different variables and phases of our relationship, and we begin to get stuck in a certain mindset. And again, whatever mindset you are facilitating in your marriage, that's how the condition of your marriage is going to be. And so a lot of times it's never the marriage that's the problem. It's the two people that's in the marriage with a dysfunctional mindset trying to have a marriage that functions properly, that have not renewed their mind. And even Brother Billy said it this morning, until your mindset changes, nothing else will. And that's with anything. As a man thinketh, so is he. And so when we realize that, what is my mindset, towards my spouse? What is my mindset towards this relationship? And if you really look at it, most of the times, when couples are arguing, I say, y'all don't have a marriage problem. And they looking at us, well, yes, we do, because this is not a marriage issue. This is a mindset issue and a maturity issue, because you guys don't know how to reason properly to facilitate this marriage. One of the illustrations I often do when I'm talking to couples together, I give them the scenario when they're in this transition point where nobody's moving, right? And I'll say, okay, you both are coming from a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, and you both have to live in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I say, you have to look through your house and only take what can fit in this 1-bedroom apartment. So they're looking at each other like, how are we going to do that? And you have to learn to reason and work together. Because if you have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, you have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, trying to put it in a 1-bedroom space is not going to work. And I use that in the illustration because some of our mindsets from our past, some of the mindsets from our previous relationships, some of the mindsets of how we see other people function in their relationship, we're trying to bring everything from everywhere from other places to try to accommodate our relationship, and it's not going to work properly.
Comes a stalemate.
You can't have in a 1-bedroom apartment 2 75-inch TVs on the wall. No, you can't. I mean, somebody will probably reason that they can, but functionally it's not even practical. And that's what happens is when we start dealing with our likes and dislikes and what we love, we begin to get stubborn. Mm-hmm. And in that place of when we become stubborn, we become adversaries. Mm-hmm. You know, instead of learning to walk into oneness. So again, we become stalemates, cellmates, roommates, and not understanding that we've come in covenant with this person. So we're going to talk about that because a lot of relationships are functioning, mm-hmm. you know, on a surface level, mm-hmm. you know, and never get to the substance of what their relationship and how their relationship is supposed to form.
Well, and what stalemate looks like is this. I got my opinion, and I will not be moved. She got her opinion, she will not be moved. And now, whereas we're supposed to be becoming soulmates, you don't find a soulmate, you become a soulmate with the one you chose to marry. So we're supposed to be becoming knit together and becoming one in our movement, but we end up at a stalemate, right? I got my opinion of things, she got her opinion of things, I'm not moving from my positions, right? And we're just stuck at an impasse, the relationship isn't growing, we aren't moving, our plans are not being realized because we're at a stalemate. There are other people that your relationship becomes merely cellmates. I'm married to you because the Bible said, the Bible said I'm supposed to stay with you until I kill you or something like that. Something like that. You become cellmates where it becomes more about a sense of obligation to the marriage, right? But not really a commitment to the person. There are many people who have an obligation to marriage because they're Christians, but they don't have a commitment to the person they married.
Also, what does that look like? Okay, once the kids get gone and grown, we can go. And we see a lot of marriages once that the last child walk across that stage and leave home or whatever they're going to do, get to that age of 18, the marriage dissolving. You're like, man, they've been married 100 years.
18-year sentence.
And they were doing an 18-year bid. Like every day they woke up and like, another day.
Marking off the calendar.
You know, like they on, ready for parole. And it's like they never, while those 18 years were going on, while they were developing children, you know, and we're in a new, we'll get into that. So anyway, so they realized, okay, at 18, this relationship ain't working. No, that was years and years of neglect of those 18 years of trying to merge and find some likeness, common places with the relationship. And so now, of course, you guys know my husband and I, we're in a new place and space in our relationship. You know, he would tell me when the kids were younger, they grow up to go away. And I thought this man was the meanest person. I'm like, babe, don't push them out. Let them stay as long as they want to. He said, no, they're getting out of here. You know, and so I'm like, no, they can stay forever, ever, ever, ever. And I know that's not realistic, but in my season of saying that they can stay forever, ever, I was trying to fix something in me through my kids. But anyway, that's a whole other parenting story. Catch me at Kanitha's conference, Healing the Mama Wounds.
What's important is that we're at another stage of our marriage. You know, we've been married since we were young. We married, I was 21 and she was 19. So the whole 20s was a stage, the 30s was a stage, the 40s was a stage. This year, my wife turns 50. I'm 52 this year. So it's all about these stages that we go through. What matters is that you have a commitment to one another. So all of these variables can change, but we got to have a love commitment to one another where we keep leaning in to do the work. You know, what we need now in this stage of our marriage is not what we needed when we were 20-something years old. So it's a choice to keep growing. You know, there's an old saying that I'm sure many of you heard coming up in the church, right? Couples that pray together, lie. I know divorced bishop and bishopresses right now. Now here's why. Because you can pray all you want to. If you don't know how to talk to somebody, y'all ain't gonna stay together. So it's not just about praying together. Here's what it is. We have changed together. So the saying should be couples that change together stay together. Think about this. We've been together since we were teenagers, 18 and 16. And now, like I said, we're in our 50s. There's a whole lot of changes that have gone on. We made a decision. We're going to make the changes of life together. You understand that? You ever heard the song, "We're in this thing together"? That's the way it should be in your relationship. And I hated to say it this way, but I would tell my wife, children, they grow up to go away. And so we don't want to build our whole life around raising them. I mean, raising them is a part of our life, but we can't raise them and oppress us. We got to make sure, do you have date night? Do you and your spouse spend time together? Do you have uninterrupted time? Do you have a commitment that, watch this now, my commitment is not to the boys in the hood. My commitment is to be a husband in my home. And so when I get off work, I want to be home. I don't want to be hanging out with nobody. You know, matter of fact, the way I decide if I'm going to hang out with my friends is this. You got anything to do Thursday? Yes, I got to do such and so. Now I make a commitment to be with some other person. I want to make sure that she has something else to do before I go making commitments to other people on a personal level. Y'all understand that?
And even that requires balance, okay? Because at times we need our space, like go. And he'll tell me sometimes, he'll like, hey, you need to go find your friends to play with, because I would try to now put all this, relationship talking and girl talk, and he's like, no, you need to call your friends for that.
No, girl talk don't work on me.
But there has to be a balance, and I love the fact that my husband and I are at a place where, hey, there's a trip coming up, there's a cruise coming up. I'm gonna be gone these days. Long as there's food in the refrigerator and things are taken care of before I leave, hey, have fun. See you when you get back. Bon voyage. And he's not, well, what y'all gonna be doing? How y'all gonna be doing? He has never, restricted me from being free to be me. And that's one of the things I love because, we've processed some things. And even when I'm like, man, I don't want to go. Can you find somebody else to go with you? Because I just want to be home. I want to do this. And so we're at that place where we know when it's time to spend time together and when it's time that we need a breather. And so a lot of times, even sitting in the same room, couples have to realize that that's not spending time together. Even though people are home, you may be here in the house, but you got to find intentional time together, to commit together. And so we have to realize that, your marriages is not going to, I said, Brother Thomas, his grass ain't going to grow and go green because he want green grass. He has to go out there twice a week and do the work. And so your marriage is not going to do what it needs to do if you don't do the work. And so even with our likes and our dislikes with our spouse, what was your spouse predisposed to before you met them? Because that has a lot to do with their reasoning.
And you got to decide if you care about their deliverance. There are times, especially men, I'm a man and I deserve. Well, do you care about what happened to her coming up? I never forget it. We're not going to really get into this in this series, but I remember, going through this particular season where my wife was like sort of averse to sexuality. And she said sex is nasty or bad. I'm like, no, the devil it ain't, right? But now the Lord had to show me she's got to go through a healing process in her sexuality because she was molested as a child. She went through a lot of sexual trauma and abuse. Watch it now. So I had to come to understand that her healing and deliverance is more important than me talking about what I deserve as a man. So you got to, once you discover, here's what my spouse is going through, you got to care, do I want what I want more than I want them whole? Do I want what I want more than I want them to walk? See, your marriage is the place where it's supposed to be safe to get delivered. Y'all hear what I just said? I said your marriage is the place where it's supposed to be safe to get delivered. I'm the one that God chose to help walk my wife through deliverances and vice versa. So that's what relationship is all about. It's about understanding what is going on in the process of the other person and deciding that you care about their process more than you do your quote-unquote needs. It's putting the other person before yourself.
And I know when we did our first week, I told you if your spouse wasn't here to text them, and I told you to look over to your spouse to ask for permission, because that's key. If that person don't give you permission to be in there, a lot of you guys know the song, if you were in R&B, the song from Music Soul Child, Teach Me How to Love. And when you hear this man talking about he's never understand how the essence essence of a man, and y'all know the song anyway. But he's telling the person that he's trying to involve himself is, all I was taught was to get a job and make sure I protect and provide for my home. There was no emotions involved. And so a lot of us women are trying to love men who really don't have the emotional capacity. And it's frustrating because they are hard workers. They are protectors. They are providers. They are this. But when it comes to the emotional place, oftentimes they are voided because they never had the opportunity to express their manhood or express their opinions or express their feelings without being categorized as weak. And so now when you go in, there was a thing that went on social media about a year, I don't know, I shared it a couple times, where you have this mother fussing at the boy and telling him to shut up. When he become a teenager, she's fussing at the boy and telling him to shut up. Then now he's a husband sitting in the bed with his wife, and she's figuring like, why you not talking? What's wrong with you? Because from zero until the time you guys got married, he was always told that his voice wasn't relevant. And so when a person don't feel that their voice is relevant, then they're not going to use their voice. When a person is told, oh, that's stupid, what you're saying is stupid, that don't make sense, they're going to eventually stop talking, because in their mind, what's the sense of trying to make sense when I don't know how to make sense of the sense that you're requiring from me?
Now, let me also add that you don't ever expect a man to have the same emotional makeup as you do.
Correct.
That just ain't gonna happen. Don't ever expect a man to have the same emotional makeup. We are made and we are wired differently. You know, for example, also in conversation, I've noticed that when women talk, y'all talk to each other at the same time. How y'all do that?
It's easy.
See, because men don't do that. We speak, and then there's this bro indicator that it's your turn. And then the bro take his turn, and then the bro indicator that it's your turn. And so it's turn, turn, turn. I'm listening to my wife talk to people, and I'm like, y'all talking at the same time. There's no, right? How y'all doing that? How y'all doing that? So the same way, you got to realize, right? You want more conversation. You know, for example, my wife, can we talk? I already know it's about to go down, right? Can we talk? Can we talk about, right? My wife will say X, Y, Z, element of P, A, B, C, M, Y, Z, X, U, Z, right? And she will give this whole speech.
Because I just want to make sure you hear me.
Right. So now, and then when I get ready to respond, now she got more words. I'm like, no, foul. Foul on the play. Foul on the play. No, there's a foul on the play. See, because in bro interactions, when you stop, that's where I was supposed to be able to express myself. So that don't work with men. Y'all gotta understand that don't work with us. And that means that you don't add more words to what you said while I'm expressing my words.
I've been just trying to get my
That don't work.
It does.
That don't work. That work with your girlfriend, but that does not work with a guy. So you just gotta understand. And all you're getting, get what?
More conversation.
Dwell with them according to what?
Conversation.
Dwell with them according to knowledge. Y'all got that? So it's important to understand we're different by design. You know, for example, when I remember when we first met and we were teenagers, and my wife loved that I listened to her. And we would talk all night. Now, actually, she talked all night. And the way I knew the conversation was over around 2 a.m. when I heard, I'm like, all right, we're done here, right? He's such a great listener until you want me to talk as much as you do. Now it's a whole problem. Because for 31 years, my wife been trying to get more words, and I've been trying to get less.
So let me tell you, the other day, go keep this current, right? We ain't giving y'all no past tense stuff.
It's up to date.
Up to date stuff, fresh, less than 72 hours. So the other day I get
fresh off the press mess.
Fresh off the press mess, yes. So the other day I get a message about a concern that I needed to address, blah, blah, blah. So before I addressed the situation, I went to my husband. I said, well, babe, okay, such and such is going on with such and 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 such, and I need you to show me how to navigate it so I don't make a mess out of such and such and such and such and such and such. Who should I call first? Such and such and such and such, to make sure get clarification. So he says, okay, right? Next thing you know, I'm just talking. And so I said, so what's your thoughts? Y'all see how quiet y'all was? That's how quiet he was. This joker done went to sleep on me.
I thought she was on the phone.
He said he thought I was on the phone, right?
I like the boy, I swear for God, I thought my wife was on them things in her ears. I'm like, I don't know who she talking to, but they having a good conversation.
So I'm like on this red couch. So I'm looking. I say, so what you think, babe? I know he ain't went to sleep. He done went to sleep on me. And at that time, my thought was, ooh, all right? But the weird thing about it, I don't know if y'all ever heard the story. Remember when the room caught fire? Y'all heard that story? The reason why the room caught fire and I set the room on fire was because
it ain't caught fire. It ain't. She said that like some of my embers blew in the window. No, she set the room on fire because I went to sleep on her.
I'm in the middle of an intense conversation. He fell asleep. So I said, okay, so you don't want to listen to me? All right. Walked out the door. And that's how the room caught fire.
So she's trying to tell you she been delivered from setting rooms on fire because I didn't talk. Let's give it up for Lady Lisa's deliverance.
I get a sticker on my shirt.
10 keys for loving past what you dislike. Let's move this train on.
Forehead, though.
Number one, be honest about how you feel. Stop lying to yourself and to your partner because there is freedom in voicing your concerns. So be honest about what you don't like. You know, and I heard people say, well, what if I tell my spouse about what I don't like and they don't change? It's not your job to change them. Listen, what do? Speak the truth in love. Now watch this. Model the truth you spoke.
Right.
Don't be a hypocrite. Don't have two different standards, one set of rules for you and one set of rules for them. So make sure you model the truth that you spoke. Because if you tell somebody that you don't like something or you need something and then you don't do what you said, then all of a sudden that becomes a disconnect from them really even committing to change. So speak the truth in love, model the truth you spoke, and here's the third thing. Intercede that God touches their heart about whatever it is that you were talking about. The third thing, listen, this is not where you control, manipulate, badger, go on and on trying to get your way. You know, I know you all heard this little ditty before. He that's changed against his will is of the same opinion still. Whatever you want to change in your relationship, you should want it to change as a matter of conviction. Say conviction. Conviction is between me and God. Coercion is when you start doing something to manipulate somebody to do what you want. That's control, that's manipulation, and that's coercion, and it ain't gonna last, and eventually it's gonna backfire on you.
So one of the things, even with speaking the truth in love, you understand everybody know who they're dealing with, you know, their environment. And so we know that truth sets us free. Now, our truth is not our opinion. You know, it's based on the word of God. And so we can't, or even things from our heart, there are some truths that we do have that we've experienced, you know. And so one of the things with that, I think when we can't also say you can't make your spouse feel like they have to walk on eggshells to have a conversation with you, because that's not safe.
Right.
Your spouse should not feel retaliation when you share the intimate parts of your heart. You know, if you share some deep things with your spouse that's hearing this, Do not take this and use this as a weapon against your spouse. And that's why a lot of people don't open up and won't open up and can't open up, because when they are been in their most vulnerable place, they became your victim. Okay? And so again, you have to be able to have that sense of comfort to be able to share. And when you are in that processing, you have to ask yourself, if they hear, see, or feel the worst in me, what, I'm saying, because you can't feel that they're going to fear the worst in you. You have to allow yourself to be free. And I remember there's been times me and my husband have had some conversations, and like even yesterday I asked him just a general question. He's like, where you going with this? I said, I just need to know so I can figure out how I need to manage, this, that, and the third. And so also you don't create an escape plan.
I texted to her. I ain't finna say it out loud. I texted to her. I'm like, I need to put some distance between me and you when I tell you.
I'm going to follow back up. No, I'm just kidding. But even in that, you do not create an emergency escape plan in the midst of emergency. Anybody work in a place where they do drills periodically? They don't do the drill in the middle of emergencies. They do the drill so that you'll know that in case something happens, this is how we have to navigate. Okay, if this happens with the bank, what's going to happen? If this happens with the children, what's going to happen? If this happens with the health, and this is not fear conversations. These are having a plan to understand in case of emergency, this is how we are going to respond.
If you become really, really, really oppressive with what you don't like about your spouse,
they'll never open
the
up.
enemy will always highlight somebody around you that has the quality you don't like in order to try to draw your attention away from your relationship. And so that's why it's important to not be all hyper and obsessive about what you like and what you don't like, because the enemy is setting you up through the things that you're saying. When you make the choice to love, you make the choice to continue to stay in the posture of being the one that's giving to the relationship, or the ones that are giving to the relationship for the benefit of the other person. The second thing to do in order to learn to love past your dislike, ask God to help you love deeper, because the growth of your love is the loss of your fear. Say, when love grows, fear subsides.
Fear subsides.
So there are times throughout our marriage, I'm like, God, I'm out of love. I'm like, you got to do something in me right now. What I'm feeling is not love. Okay? So you ask God to help you to love on a deeper level. Anybody ever prayed that? Lord, help me to love on a, not give me another one, but hello. Right. Learn how to ask God to help you love on a deeper level. Now, again, perfect love casts out what? Watch this now. So as I grow in love, fears are diminishing and dying off in a relationship. It takes courage to love somebody the way God told you to. It takes courage to keep showing up, as my wife said, hidden reset every morning. His mercies are what?
New every morning.
How often?
Every morning.
So if God is merciful toward you every morning, why you got an attitude with your spouse the next day after something went down? Come on, somebody. If God is merciful toward you every morning, then why are you still talking about you never do this and you never do that? You got to hit reset. If you want your relationship to grow, to evolve, and to become everything that God has purposed, you got to hit reset. His mercies are new every morning. One of the things I make a decision is I refuse to hold anything against my wife. I refuse to hold anything against her for any length of time. There's no going days.
Nothing wrong.
Lord, y'all see? Y'all pray? Y'all see? Y'all heard what she said? She said because she don't do nothing wrong. Y'all see how to pray for her, right? Number 3, don't focus too deeply on the dislike, but practice focusing on what you like about your partner, because, watch this now, what you dislike was not the deal maker, so it shouldn't be the deal breaker. Go ahead.
And that's when you get into that 80-20 paradigm. And a lot of you guys have heard,
80-20.
The 80-20, you know what I'm saying? And you start now just despising, the person you with. So it's like you have this love-hate relationship with the person that you're in covenant with. but you're starting to hate them. And a lot of times the reason why we have the growth in the dislike area is because we're looking over into other places, comparing it to other things.
Oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. So the reason that you're highlighting what you don't like about your spouse is because you're warring with the fact that somebody at work has qualities that they don't. So it's a comparison that's going on. You ain't noticed my hair. No, what you're struggling with is that your work base says something about your hair and I didn't. So that's the real struggle. Now that brings me to another point. Have you even created certain standards and boundaries when it comes to other people and their behavior towards your marriage? Y'all understand that? You know, if somebody come on to my wife, which they do, I'm the first person she notifies. Come on, somebody. If somebody come on to me, which we're gorgeous people. I mean, we're just gorgeous people. So it's bound to happen. But now when they do, she's the first person that I notify. You understand that? You know, it was a couple weeks ago, I think it was, that some woman coming on to me, right? Bam, you want to see this? Bam, so you can deal with this. My wife know how to get in this. You know, if your phone like Fort Knox, you can't be trusted. If you married, there ain't no such thing as privacy. Where you get that from? You want privacy, you should have stayed single. I can go in my wife's phone, I got her code, I can go in her email, I can go in her Facebook. There's no such thing as privacy from my spouse. Where y'all get this from in this modern marriage thing? The public phone. Where y'all get this from? You know, when you come into covenant with somebody, you're supposed to be an open book. Y'all understand that? You know, and I've told you all this before. Everybody that come to the house of God don't have good motives, and not all predators are men. I said not all predators are men. Listen to me, this is a true story. There are women that joined this church that told other women about me, I'm going to get that man. So not all predators are men. There are some predatory women. You understand that? And it's a game to them to see if they can get something that's off limits to them. So you got to make sure that you have safeguards and open lines of communication. If I come and tell my wife that so-and-so is attracted to me, my wife is not supposed to attack me because I told her about an attack coming against me. You don't attack me from being attacked. I said you don't attack me for being attacked. And vice versa. Some guy comes on to her, I ain't know what you do to make him try. No, ain't know what you do. In order for us to have oneness and continue to grow, there has to be vulnerability. But you don't use that vulnerability and try to use it against your spouse when they're trying to create that kind of a bond and connection and transparency with you. Now, let me mention this real quick. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Maybe I will, if you want to. If there has been a loss of trust in your relationship and you're rebuilding trust, right? Where are you? If that's you, right? All right, so let me tell you how to get trust back, okay? Here's an acronym I want you to remember. I always tell couples, C-A-T, CAT, C-A-T. Whenever there's a loss of trust, if you want to rebuild trust in your relationship, one of the first things that you have to do.
Just say act instead of cat, because the cat got him in trouble anyway.
What a deliverance team. I need a member. Wendy, cfmdeliverance@gmail.com. Get her on the schedule. I ain't even going to tell you what my wife just said. My wife's, never mind. So watch this now. So say C-A-T. If you want to rebuild trust, number one, there has to be consistency. Say consistency. Here it is, brother. Do what you said, when you said, how you said you were going to do it. If something changes, you have to communicate the change. If you say you're on your way home, and home is 15 minutes from work, and it take you an hour and a half to get home because the plans changed, but you didn't communicate the change of plans, trust is not growing. So, and here's the second thing, accountability, right? My wife doesn't go anywhere. Hey, here's where I'm going. Here's where I'm going. I'm the same way. Hey, I'm leaving work. 30 years later, we are accountable to each other. There's no missing time. Some of y'all like time bandits. You got like hours missing and days missing out of your life that nobody can account for, right? So there should be accountability. We are one of another. That means we are accountable to each other about what we do in our movements and whatnot. Now, the third thing is transparency, and that's why I brought that up. When you know there's something going on in your heart, you need to be transparent about that. You need to be an open book to your spouse. So if you have consistency, accountability, and transparency, then slowly the trust tank begins to refill. Now remember this, forgiveness is mandatory. Trust is not. Forgiveness and trust are not a package deal. So you get forgiveness because I'm forgiven. You get trust because you demonstrate trustworthiness. Those are two different things. No, say number 4, because you need deliverance. Y'all know ever since our kids, we're in another phase of life. Our kids are grown. She like, what you finna say? So our kids are grown now. I don't know why it is she tried to keep me out of clothes. It's like I can't wear no clothes around the house now. What is that all about? It's like, what you coming to bed with that on for? It's another stage of life.
So we'll be going through deliverance together. All right. Dude.
You don't need no drawers in the bed. What you need drawers for? Number 4.
Pardon this interruption for a brief commercial break. All right, number 4, avoid becoming negative and antagonistic about what you dislike. And I think what happens in that, and especially women, we can be a little impetuous about what we don't like. We can. I'm honest. And the Bible talks about,
It's better to dwell on the corner of the housetop.
You memorized that scripture
I don't know,
first.
That just came straight to mind.
Yeah, you learned that when you first got saved. But anyway, avoid becoming negative and antagonistic about your dislikes. And that goes both ways, because there are some men who have emotionally scarred their wives. Have said some very hurtful things, very demeaning things. We won't get into that. But avoid that, because what happens is love is supposed to be the place where your relationship is supposed to be the place where love nurtures the other person. And again, it talks about love is kind. And so be kind, you may feel like at the moment you have to say certain things or whatever. And like Billy said, when you get into a place where you pray first and then respond, then you'll have a lot less messes to clean up. But then when you respond and then go to prayer, then you have to now realize, okay, we're making messes. And the Bible tells us that what our warfare is, it's not against flesh and blood. And there's things that sometimes our spouse don't even know that they're operating by defect or default, or dysfunction. And so we have to be mindful. So the thing of it is, what if you don't really know how to pray, and what to pray for, and again, it goes back in alignment of not self-diagnosing your spouse, not trying to counsel your spouse, but being able to have that climate where everything flows. And so again, ask God to help you love deeper. You have to even say, okay, God, show me, where I have become bitter. Because a lot of people don't want to admit that they're bitter. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're scorned. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're walking in unforgiveness and fear in their relationship. And even when me and him get into certain, places where it's chaos, I'm like, okay, what am I dealing with? What's going on? First, I have to do with me. Because mind blinding spirits are real. And so sometimes we can get so disabled in our reasoning until we make, they say don't make a mountain into a molehill. Sometimes we take things because we don't know how to properly assess them, and we magnify it bigger than what it is. And so where we have this one small issue, now it becomes a erupting volcano. So understanding and to deal with things as they come and not letting things build up and everything. And so also
that's keeping your account current.
Keeping the account current.
If you got something going on, deal with it today. Don't store up all the offenses, because then it's going to come out it's going to come out in a very ugly way at a most inappropriate time. And so that's why it's important to keep the accounts current. Don't go days and weeks without dealing with something that you know is bothering you. And there's so many people right now that the reason they're dealing with sickness, a lot of unnecessary illness in their body, is because of bitterness with their spouse. And they don't realize that bitterness is as rottenness to the bone. You literally begin getting yourself sick, literally, because you won't deal with the things that you need to deal with and address them the way that God told you to address them. So make sure, number 5, make sure you avoid complaining, because no amount of complaining will change another person. So use your words constructively instead of destructively. For example, my wife can say, I never forget, my wife used to complain about us not spending enough time together. And so I made a concerted effort. I said, okay, then we're going to do date night. All right? And so, while we went out on date night, and then while we was on date night, she was complaining about how we didn't spend much time together.
Or if we were out, just us, I would be like, oh, let me call and check on the kids, or let me make sure, and that was like, to him, it's like, we are away, it's time for us, and you're worrying about the kids. We were in another country one time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, it's such and such time now, and I got to make sure. And he's like, so what you go do 1,000 miles away from the situation? I realized there was nothing I could do, but I just wanted to make sure that my children were okay. And so he would sit there and be like, they probably ain't even thinking about you. And so he would say stuff like that, and then I would call, and most of the time Marley would answer the phone. Hey, mama, da 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 da. What y'all doing? Such and such and such. Where your brother? Such and such and such, or such and such and such. All right, bye. And so he say, see, they wasn't thinking about you. You interrupted their time. If they was concerned about you, they'll call you. And I was like, he's making a valid point. But I didn't want to admit it. But yeah, we do waste a lot of time majoring on minor things and minoring on major things.
Leave room for God to make the necessary corrections. For example, I'm going to show you this. My wife said a moment ago that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. There's a lot of time that really people don't realize what you're dealing with is a spiritual assignment that has come against your spouse. And you're so busy contending with the person that the principalities that have come against their heart or come against their mind are not being addressed. Y'all realize if you're married, you should be your spouse's greatest, literally their greatest intercessor. Here's why. Because other people may have to assume about them. You know everything about them. And that's supposed to give you a unique position, not as their adversary. That's not supposed to help you win an argument. That's supposed to make you their chief intercessor. So when you're going before the Lord, or when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, there's some things you should pray about, and there's some things you should war about. Y'all realize there's a difference between prayer and intercession and warfare? And there are some situations going on in marriage or in your relationship that require warfare and not just intercession. And that means that you got to get aggressive toward the principalities and powers that are trying to bind, blind, or block what it is the Lord is trying to do in their life. And so it's important to leave room for God to make those corrections. Pray and then watch God move. And don't become God in the process. I never forget, I told you all before, there was a time when I got upset with my wife because the version of the Holy Spirit that she had and the version that I had weren't the same version. It's sort of like version 10.0 and 2.0, right? And it didn't seem like he was convicting her to change fast enough. And I never forget, yeah, she was still on the dial-up version of the Holy Ghost, and I was already on 5G. And so I remember getting upset because she wasn't changing like I thought she should change. And I never forget, I went to the Lord. Here's what he said. He said, as long as your hand is on a situation, mine is not. He said, I'm not going to move on that situation until you take your hands off of it. You know what he said? You are not the Holy Spirit.
Now you want to know also what the Lord showed us, that God was using that one scenario to bring deliverance to both of us off of two opposite extremes of the situation. And so there was things that I was thinking that, you know, in my mind, and God was after. There was things that he was thinking, and God was after what was going on in his mind. And so when you're dealing with these things and you're not understanding, like, okay, why are we going through this? Sometimes you say, well, we keep going through this same cycle. Things that go so far, so fast, and then next thing we're back at this point. You know why? Because God is allowing those circumstances to bring you to the end of self and bring you to a place of deliverance. And going through it, it doesn't feel good, it doesn't look good, it doesn't sound good, it doesn't make good sense or anything. But then once you realize what's going on and then you come into agreement with that process of deliverance, then, and you begin to heal in those areas, then the tension and the pressure and the stress and the chaos of that, sometimes it don't immediately go away, or it's not in a repetitive place. It may revisit every now and then, but it's not in that constant throw. And so you have to understand, that's why when God first called us to It Takes Three, I was trying to do work on my own and be my own independent person, and he was trying to let God do what he was going to do, and I just didn't understand why it was just to do too much. And so when God got involved, he showed me this scenario. And it was interesting because I realized we never invited God into our relationship. And we were trying to have a Christian relationship, Christian marriage, but we didn't have a Christ center. And so that was the breaking point. That was the shift to our marriage. That was a release from a lot of chaos and tension, because I realized we are not doing this God's way. And at the time, our church, we were studying this book, Living God's Way. And so it was one of those things like, okay, well, we're reading this book, and we had, our catechism classes, and we had this structure going, but we were getting this information, but we didn't know how to apply this information that we were getting. And so one of the things I realized, that when a couple is in crisis, they don't need more information or impartation. They need to know how to apply what they already have. And so what happened was, and then we went on the trip, a weekend to remember. And it was at that moment, we were in that place, and we realized that we were functioning by default, thinking that we were okay. And we had to learn how to be married. We had to learn what marriage was. And so we had to learn, there are some things about my husband that's not going to ever change. There are some things about his wife that's never going to change. And we have to understand, where do we put our weight and value on the things that we dislike? Are we going to throw away a perfectly good marriage or a decent relationship because of this one agitating dislike? And again, dislike and abuse is different.
Right.
All right? If you're if it's dislikes is about preferences. And also making sure that we are not self-righteous, because a lot of times, even especially when you have a believer who's more mature in the word, and one who has been, I used to talk, oh, you just self-righteous, because da-da-da-da-da, and I would antagonize him for being self-righteous. In the meantime, I'm trying to make sure before I commit this thing to God, if he's really living right. So I was in a contradiction even in my own mind. I'm jabbing at him, calling him little Jesus Jr., little baby KJ, this, that, another thing, little God, baby God, and I'm just antagonizing him. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm really having a hard time believing anybody can walk this thing out with God. So I'm going to provoke this man. Love does not provoke. But I'm going to provoke this man to see if he really going to come off his God game. And then he going to start defaulting, because I was waiting for another inconsistent Christian to manifest. Because growing up, I would see people go to church, come home sleeping with everybody. I would see people come to church and then they would go home smoking crack, doing this, doing that, and everything. And I used to sit on my mama porch like, oh my gosh, your friend's so fake. She a hypocrite. Why she keep going to them people church? You know, and so then now my husband want to come home one day with this revelation from God to get his life together. And I'm saying, nah, buddy, we finna watch you. And I literally watch my husband, unfortunately, out of fear that if I commit to God, watching him, and, you know, I'm like, okay, I want to make sure he get far enough out there so if he fall, I can come back, you know, because I still had a Thursday night club to go to and a Friday night club to go to and a Saturday night club I need to go to. So therefore, I was watching out of fear to see how consistent he was. And so there's a lot of people who are even in here that have a spouse, and it's like they are antagonizing your faith. You know, you're coming to church, you're praying, you're believing God, but it's like they're antagonizing you for being the believer. And so what they're really saying is, I'm trying to see how safe it is to really commit to the God you say you serve. And a lot of us mess it up because we get back in our flesh, hit reset, and in the process have to start over again.
There is no one here, and I'm going to talk to the single people for just a moment. I don't care how safely you choose a spouse. You're going to die. I don't care how safely you choose. And a lot of us try to be real safe. Oh, they got this and they do that and they do that. I'm telling you, once you get into that covenant relationship, God has ordained a process to bring us to the end of ourselves. And so you better believe, no matter how carefully you try to select somebody, there's still a death. There's 1,000 deaths, because one of the things that marriage is designed to do, listen to this, marriage is not designed to make you happy. It's designed to make you holy. It's designed. Marriage is about likeness. It's about the likeness of Christ. And the reality that through this covenant relationship, God is bringing us to the end of ourselves so that he can express his divine life through our union. Y'all got that, believers? So remember, there is something about you right now that's not in perfect alignment with the Lord's standard, and yet he chooses his thoughts towards you. He says, I know the thoughts I have toward you. They're thoughts of good. So even though and there's nobody in this room that got everything together, not one person who has everything together. Everything is all perfect and in alignment with God's perfect will, all right? Yet he chooses his thoughts toward you. That's the same way he wants us to be toward our spouse. Yes, will you allow yourself to receive inconvenient truths from an imperfect person?
Ladies, I just want to insert something for you. I always know when God is about to shift me in my life, when he requires me to go pick up this one particular book. And it's called 30 Days of Taming the Tongue. Okay? And every time the Lord say, go back to this book and read this book and study this book, every time, even though, you know, I'm like, okay, I've read this book before. I bought this book some years ago. But I always know when God is requiring a shift with me, because he has me in this book. And I'm sitting and I'm like, okay, and every time I read this book, it's a new revelation about the power of my words, the power of my tongue, you know, and allowing certain things to come out of my mouth. And so even in that's been a benefit to me, because as we've shifted, you know, in this relationship, you know, to making sure, you know, there's things I see, you know, and there's things I'm you know, God is showing me. And before, in my immature phase, I would just at my mouth, because it's my mouth and I say what I want to say. But now, as I've matured, and this book has been very instrumental to you. And so I say all that to say this, ladies. Physically, my husband can you know, he can wrestle me down, right?
I can take you.
I let him think that. But verbally, I can shut his whole ecosystem down. And as a woman, as a wife, we have to understand how to be able to praise him, but not enable some of the things that are not what God is requiring, but also building him up without bruising his ego. And so learning those simple techniques, even just through my process, and I've seen the climate and the atmosphere of my relationship and my marriage shift. You know, certain mindsets that I had, you know, because like I said, for a long time, I was at a place where I'm like, I'm watching you, I'm watching you, I'm gonna see, you know, and is it safe to step into the waters? And so you may have a husband or a spouse, you know, because it's not always the men who are out here not functioning by design in a relationship. There are some women that are not functioning by, you know, design in the marriage relationship. But it can seem frustrating. It can seem, okay, I'm coming to church, I'm doing everything, I'm praying, and I'm trying to seek counsel. I'm trying to, you know, do this. When you get to the core of the mindset that your spouse is operating in, and you're using it to help further them and not disable them, because you have to know how to disarm the strong man. Okay? And if you don't know how to disarm the strong man, you're going to constantly be in battles and wars in your relationship. And I know people who've gotten divorced who look back and say, me and so shouldn't have never gotten divorced. We listen to you, I listen to you, and I sometimes hear you, an apostle saying, I got a divorce, and now I realize, but now they don't want me back, or however it goes, but now they realize that they had the tools, they just chose not to use them. Okay? And so, none of us are perfect, okay? Not even the one that come and shamalama on the carpet, you know, on the thing. And so I'm gonna tell you about a funny fight we had one time. We was going back and forth, and we did everything but your mama, right? And so next thing you know, I'm sitting here like, we acting a plumb monkey. We are in here acting a plumb monkey. And so here I go. I want to jump now. I'm like, so if we was counseling somebody, what would you say? What would you do? And right? And he was looking at me like, oh, you hit below the belt. So now we got amped up again. And so we both realized, like, we being used like two little monkey pawns. We were like, we both being used. And it came to a place of humbling for both of us, because his scriptures and my scriptures and his discernment and my discernment, we're just playing tennis, verbal tennis, going back and forth until we both realize we are not being obedient to the presence of God in our home. And that helped shift. Now, have we had situations like that since then? Yes, but we don't swing the bat that many times now. We like, whoa, you serve. No, you serve. No, I got a point. Okay. I'm very comical on a lot of things. I bet y'all say, she's so childish. But sometimes I have to give y'all certain illustrations because you can relate, you know, because a lot of you are not really in the word. You're not in the presence of the Lord. And that's another thing. And I'm going to leave him to the rest of the conversation to close out. A lot of times we're saying we're doing it God's way, and we're done everything we can do. I've tried everything, and you haven't tried everything. I remember we went to counsel, and I'm like, Apostle, I'm done. I done said everything. I done did everything. I done did it. I done did everything. I did it. I did everything. And so we're both throwing out everything in the pot, making a messy soup, right? Bishop looked, and he said, daughter, son, it wasn't no prophetess. It wasn't no apostle. It wasn't, no. I'm going to humble you because I'm taking all this, that, you know, other stuff that's unnecessary and bringing you back to neutral. Have you really tried everything? Yeah. Ask the question again. I'm like, let me hush because, I came for counsel, and I'm open, and that's what he's talking about. We came for counsel. Stop over talking. Stop over talking him. We came for counsel. So when I sat and I disarmed myself and I allowed the fact that we went for counseling to be what we were really there for and took all the threat out the room, well, we both left like this, with our tails tucked between each other's tail. Like, we were like, wow, we didn't really realize, And it was the conversation that our apostle gave us was so humbling, until the point that we both realized that it's not about all of this and all of that. It's what's going on in here.
It's the new work.
What's going on in here. And there has to be work that is applied. And so it's not going to come easy, and it's not just going to come by osmosis and hanging out. Hanging out with other couples is good because you're getting, examples, but your relationship is not going to be enriched by hanging around people. You have to do your own work, and sometimes you spend too much time around other couples. You need to learn. Date night is fine. Double dating is fine. Don't get me wrong. But you have to be able to spend that quality time with each other. If it's like, what y'all having, a foursome, three? Because y'all always together. Like, can y'all relationship have its own ID? I mean, I'm sorry for thinking like that, but that's sometimes how I think. Like, come on, can y'all learn to get together and learn each other? Yeah, and that's important. A lot of you are fighting with somebody that you really don't know. You're married to somebody that you really don't know. You have an idea of who they are. You have a concept in your mind of who they should be, but you don't know them. You don't know them.
So the last two things, realize that the differences that are personality, there are certain differences that are personality, not intentional agitations of you, And so it's important to realize there are certain things that are just germane to who your spouse is. They're not doing this to you or against you. It is just the way that they've always been, or the way they've always processed certain things. And then lastly, assume the best, even though sometimes you will see the contrary. One of the things that's real important in this covenant process, as I mentioned a moment ago, and this is critical to the marital conversation, is this. You have to give yourself permission to receive truth from the person when you know all their flaws. See, the reality of it is, I'm not the source of truth. My wife is not the source of truth. So when my wife says something, I got to realize that if there's a truth behind that, that's the Lord talking to me. And I've got to give myself permission to be able to receive inconvenient truths when I know all her flaws, and vice versa. You have to give yourself permission to still address and engage the truth that's being spoken, even though you know all their flaws, all their weaknesses, all their idiosyncrasies. You know all of that. Amen? So listen, I hope you guys have been blessed today. I hope you learned that you really can love past what you dislike.
Thank you for joining us today. Visit us for one of 2 services on Sunday mornings, 8 o'clock and 10:30 a.m. There are so many ways to partner with us. If God is using this ministry to impact your life and you would like to reach others by sowing a seed, text the word GIVE to 754-210-8654. Visit www.centerformanifestation.com to stay connected with us. Also, visit us on YouTube at Manifestations Worldwide. This is the season for the manifestation of the sons of God. Be blessed and manifest.